The rain wouldn't stop. It crashed against the windshield like angry fists, making it impossible to sleep. Emily Carter sat behind the wheel of her old Honda Civic, parked in the back corner of a gas station lot just outside the city. The heater barely worked. Her coat wasn't thick enough. Her belly, 6 months pregnant, pressed up against the steering wheel. And yet, she didn't cry anymore. Not tonight. She had run out of tears days ago. She shifted uncomfortably, wincing at the shooting pain in her lower back. Her entire body ached from sleeping in a cramped seat for the 3rd night in a row. The baby kicked, and she placed a hand on her stomach instinctively, whispering, "I'm so sorry, baby. I'm trying." How did it come to this? Just 7 days ago, she had stood in a ballroom filled with chandeliers, golden champagne towers, and designer gowns. She was the elegant wife on the arm of Andrew Carter, a senior investment director at one of the city's most powerful hedge funds. The gala was supposed to be the highlight of his career. And she? She was supposed to smile, say the right things, wear the dress he chose for her, and stay quiet. But that night had changed everything. Emily could still hear the laughter, cold, calculated, and cruel. She had caught him whispering to another woman, a tall brunette in a backless dress with legs that never seemed to end. The way Andrew looked at her, it wasn't professional. It wasn't innocent. And when she asked about it, just asked, he didn't deny anything. "You're becoming a burden, Emily," he'd said under his breath, while cameras flashed and people danced around them. "Do you know what it looks like, me dragging around a bloated, hormonal woman at every event?" She had stood there, stunned, barely breathing. "I'm your wife. I'm pregnant with your child." "Yeah, and maybe that was a mistake," he muttered, sipping his whiskey before walking away to join his mistress. That was the last night she saw him in their penthouse. 2 days later, she came home to find the locks changed, her clothes in a black trash bag, and a cold message from his assistant. "Mr. Carter no longer wishes to be contacted. Legal will be in touch. No apology, no explanation, no support." Emily had no family left. Her mother died 2 years earlier, and she had no siblings. All her friends were his friends now, or at least they acted like it. When she called for help, no one answered. Some blocked her. Others left her on red. The girl who once hosted charity brunches and modeled maternity couture was now just another homeless woman in a dented car, hiding from the world, surviving on crackers and bottled water. She checked her phone. 2% battery. No messages. No missed calls. Just silence. A knock on her window startled her. She gasped, pulling her coat tighter. A gas station attendant stood outside, holding an umbrella. He didn't smile. "Ma'am, you can't stay here all night. You need to move." She nodded slowly. Just 5 more minutes, please." The man sighed, then walked away without answering. She was invisible to him, just another broken stranger. Emily turned the key, praying the engine wouldn't stall. It wheezed but started. She pulled out of the lot and drove toward the city, not knowing where to go. Her savings were gone, used up on prenatal vitamins, gas, and the one night she tried to sleep in a motel, only to be kicked out when she couldn't pay the full amount up front. The streets blurred as the rain poured harder. Her vision doubled, and exhaustion made her hands tremble. She pulled over again near a quiet park and rested her head on the steering wheel. She was done. Empty. Forgotten. Until a sleek black Rolls-Royce slowed to a stop beside her. Its tinted window rolled down, revealing a man in a charcoal suit, sharp jawline, and eyes that scanned her face with something she hadn't seen in days. Concern. "Are you okay?" he asked. She stared at him, unsure how to respond. No one had asked her that. Not once. I'm fine," she lied. "No, you're not," he said calmly. "Do you need help?" She hesitated. Her pride wanted her to drive away. Her fear begged her to say yes. Her baby kicked again. "I don't need money," she said quickly. "I'm not asking for anything." "I didn't offer money," he said, voice low and controlled. "I offered help." She looked down, ashamed of the tears sliding down her cheek. "Do you have somewhere safe to go tonight?" he asked. She shook her head. A pause. Then he reached into the back seat, pulled something out, and held it out to her through the rain. A key. A single, silver key attached to a hotel card. "This is the master suite at the Langham. Go inside. Tell them Mr. Blake sent you. They'll take care of everything." "Why?" she whispered, barely able to believe him. "Because someone should." And with that, the window rolled up. The car pulled away. She stood there in the rain, staring at the key in her hand. Emily Carter had no idea who Mr. Blake was. But tonight a stranger had given her more than a room. He had given her a chance to breathe. And soon the world would learn. The woman they threw away wasn't weak. She was just getting started. Before the rain, before the heartbreak, before the betrayal, Emily Carter was the woman everyone admired, but no one truly saw. She had a smile that made people feel welcome, a soft voice that never interrupted, and eyes that still believed in fairy tales. At 28, she was the type of woman people described as sweet, graceful, or the perfect wife. And for a time, that's exactly what she tried to be. Emily grew up in a small town called Havenbrook, nestled between two sleepy highways in upstate New York. Her mother, a nurse, worked long shifts and always came home with tired feet, but a full heart. Her father was gone before she turned 4. Cancer. It was just Emily and her mom for most of her life, living paycheck to paycheck, but there was always laughter in their tiny kitchen. Her mom used to say, "Kindness is wealth no one can steal." Emily believed it. She still does. She was the girl who organized charity bake sales in high school and volunteered at the local library on weekends. She didn't have much, but she had big dreams. She got a scholarship to a modest liberal arts college and majored in early childhood education. She wanted to teach, wanted to help kids who, like her, came from too little but dreamed of too much. And then she met Andrew Carter. He was everything she wasn't. Polished, powerful, magnetic. She was tutoring in a coffee shop when he walked in with a client. He noticed her because she spilled her tea all over a pile of lesson plans. He laughed, offered a napkin, and before she could even finish apologizing, he had her number. It moved fast. Too fast, maybe. Andrew liked that she was quiet, that she didn't come from money, that she didn't know the difference between a stock option and a hedge fund. He said she made him feel grounded. "You're real," he told her once. "I'm always surrounded by sharks. You're the only one who makes me breathe." She fell for him completely. At first he was sweet. He left flowers on her windshield, called her every night, held her hand under the table during dinner parties. Within a year, they were married in an intimate ceremony overlooking the Hudson. Emily wore a second-hand lace gown and cried when Andrew kissed her. She thought it was the start of forever. But forever started to crack at the edges almost immediately. Andrew was obsessed with image. The perfect house, the perfect car, the perfect wife. He wanted Emily to quit her job, saying it didn't make sense for Mrs. Carter to be working in a preschool when he could provide everything. She hesitated, but he insisted. He said he wanted her safe, rested, free, so she gave it all up. Their days began to feel staged, like every moment needed to be curated for social media or whispered about at cocktail parties. She had to smile just right, wear what he picked, and sit silently during business dinners while men toasted each other and women competed with diamonds and designer heels. Still, she tried. She learned to host dinner parties and memorize names of investment partners' wives. She took etiquette classes because Andrew said she moved like a waitress. She changed her hairstyle, her wardrobe, even her laugh, and when she found out she was pregnant, she thought, finally something real. Something theirs. At first, Andrew seemed thrilled. He kissed her belly and called their unborn daughter, "Our little legacy." He even posted a photo of the sonogram online with the caption, "Our biggest investment yet." It got over 4,000 likes. But then the changes began. He stopped coming to appointments, said he had meetings, said he was tired. When she was 5 months pregnant, he didn't come home one night. He said he was in Boston for a conference, but she found a receipt from a luxury hotel in the city. No flight records, no business meetings. She didn't say anything. Emily had become so good at pretending. She told herself he was just stressed. That men reacted differently to fatherhood. That if she just stayed calm, stayed perfect, he'd come back to her. She started reading parenting books, making homemade meals, even tried prenatal yoga, anything to feel prepared, anything to believe in a future. But the coldness got worse. The distance grew. And then came the gala. She should have seen it coming. That night, she wore the navy gown he picked out weeks before. Her belly was just showing enough to make her glow. She had spent 3 hours getting ready, trying to make him proud. She stood by his side, smiling politely at his colleagues, sipping ginger ale and a champagne flute so no one would notice. And then she saw the woman, tall, thin, lips too red, hands too familiar on Andrew's chest. When she confronted him, he didn't flinch. "You think I want to parade a pregnant woman around all night?" he whispered between gritted teeth. "You're embarrassing. You've let yourself go." It shattered her. She didn't scream, didn't cry. She stood there, stunned, while he walked away. 2 days later, he had her thrown out. She didn't fight. She didn't call lawyers or make threats. She packed what she could into the trunk of her car and drove away from the penthouse she once called home. Now she sleeps in that car. She eats what she can, showers at gas stations. She keeps the baby's ultrasound photo folded in her wallet, right next to the key to a storage unit that holds the last pieces of her old life. She tells herself each night, just one more day. Just keep going. She's scared, exhausted, alone. But somewhere inside her, deep beneath the heartbreak and shame, is a spark. The same spark that helped her survive fatherless nights, part-time jobs, and scholarship interviews. The same fire that once believed in changing the world. She's not done yet, and soon neither is her story. The last time Emily Carter stepped inside the Carlton Grand Hotel, her heels clicked against polished marble, echoing between gold pillars and chandeliers imported from Vienna. That night, she was the wife of a man who owned the room. Andrew Carter, Wall Street golden boy, hedge fund superstar, the name on every donor list and every whispered invitation. They arrived in a black town car, escorted to the red carpet by uniformed valets. Photographers swarmed the steps. Flashbulbs went off like fireworks. Emily smiled politely, posed with her hand resting just above her pregnant belly. Andrew waved, his arm tight around her waist, not out of love, but out of optics. Inside the ballroom, everything glittered. Crystal glasses, silverware that weighed more than her phone, floral centerpieces so tall you couldn't see the person across the table. A 7-piece orchestra played jazz versions of pop songs. Waiters in white gloves glided across the room, offering lobster canapes and vintage champagne. Emily didn't drink. She held a flute of sparkling water and watched the bubbles rise while pretending not to notice how many times Andrew slipped away from her side. It was a world built on image, power, perfection, and wealth. Women wore gowns that cost more than Emily's first car. Men toasted to mergers and acquisitions. Everyone looked like they belonged. Except her. Even then, she felt it. Like the hem of her dress was too short, her smile too soft, her presence too quiet. She didn't speak the language of leverage, capital, or insider tips. She had nothing to prove, no fortune to flaunt, no last name that opened doors. She was just the wife. Pregnant, polite, and in the way. She remembered walking past the women's lounge where another guest, too drunk to notice her standing behind, whispered, "God, can you believe Andrew married her? She looks like a secretary, not a socialite." Another laughed. Maybe he needed a tax write-off. That was 2 weeks ago. Now? Now she brushes her teeth in gas station bathrooms, rinsing her mouth with bottled water and praying no one notices how swollen her ankles have become. She sleeps curled up in the back seat of her car, parked near loading docks, behind gyms, wherever security doesn't immediately chase her away. At night, she wears 2 hoodies, layers of old t-shirts, and the same maternity jeans she used to pair with stilettos. Her hair is tied back in a messy bun. Her makeup, once done professionally for charity galas, is gone. Her face is bare. Her lips are cracked. She hasn't looked in a mirror in 3 days. The city hasn't changed. Just her view of it. Where once she looked down on the skyline from the penthouse kitchen, watching boats glide across the river as she sipped herbal tea, now she watches taillights flicker from behind a fogged-up windshield. She used to wake to sun filtering through sheer designer curtains. Now she wakes to the dull gray light of dawn squeezing past parking lot lamps. The difference is staggering. Luxury isn't just comfort, it's silence. Heated floors, soundproof walls. It's breakfast arriving on a tray. It's knowing you'll eat. It's having a closet full of options, clean sheets, warm water, someone to turn to when the world feels too loud. Out here there is no silence. Just the hum of traffic, sirens in the distance, and the occasional knock from a stranger who thinks her car is abandoned. It's never really dark, but it's never truly safe either. The worst part isn't the cold or the hunger or even the fear, it's the invisibility. In the gala, people saw her, they judged her, sure, but they noticed her. Here, no one looks twice. She's another problem, another shadow on the sidewalk. People clutch their purses when they see her belly, as if poverty might be contagious. No one asks if she's okay. And yet, it's in this setting, the lowest place she's ever been, that Emily begins to feel something unfamiliar: control. No one's watching now. No one's managing her smile or criticizing her shoes. There's no pressure to play a part. Out here, in the raw, exposed space of the city's underbelly, she is stripped bare. And that means she gets to choose who she becomes next. It's in the silence of these nights, with her hands cradling her belly, that she begins to plan. She remembers the way people moved in the galas, how they whispered secrets into flutes of champagne, how deals were made behind bathroom doors, how one woman's name could make or break an investment. She had always been on the outside of that world, smiling politely, pretending not to listen. But she listened. She remembers numbers, companies, patterns, names of people Andrew thought she wasn't smart enough to follow. She remembers passwords, access points, even the shell accounts he bragged about hiding. She didn't care then, but she does now. The city sparkles for some, for others it devours. Emily knows now it can do both. The plaza where she once attended a donor luncheon is just 10 blocks from the alley where she parks at night. The same city, two different realities, one polished, curated, and fake, the other brutal, messy, and honest. She isn't part of either. Not yet. But she's starting to realize something important. She doesn't need to return to that ballroom. She needs to build her own. This car, this storm, this cold, they're not the end. They're the beginning. One day soon, she'll walk back into that world. Not as Andrew Carter's wife, not as the quiet girl with nothing to offer, but as a woman no one saw coming. Andrew Carter didn't start out as a monster. That's what makes him dangerous. He knew how to play the part. Charming, composed, generous and public, a man with perfect teeth and the kind of laugh that made boardrooms lean in. But behind that silk tie and that self-assured smirk was a man who fed on control, and he found his perfect victim in Emily. To the world, he was the quintessential success story. Born into a middle-class family in Connecticut, he climbed his way through Ivy League schools on scholarships and charm. By 29, he was a hedge fund prodigy. By 32, he had his name printed under Top 40 Under 40 in every finance magazine in Manhattan. But accolades weren't enough for Andrew. He needed power. He needed to own every room and every person in it, including his wife. He met Emily when he was still climbing the ladder. She was sweet, innocent, nothing like the women he worked with. She didn't care about bank statements or private jets. That made her refreshing and easy to control. He swept her off her feet with first-class dates, whispered promises, and the illusion of safety. She believed him when he said she made him better. She didn't realize he just wanted someone who wouldn't compete with him. Andrew liked his women like he liked his wine, expensive, decorative, and silent. At first, Emily played the part willingly. She supported his career, smiled at the right people, learned to wear what he liked, speak when spoken to, and fade into the background when business mattered. He trained her slowly without her even noticing. He was a master at it, gaslighting her into silence, calling it love, calling it being a team. But love had nothing to do with what Andrew Carter wanted. He wanted admiration. And when admiration turned to expectation, when Emily's pregnancy shifted the spotlight away from him and onto someone else, he grew cold. It wasn't about the baby. Not really. It was about control. Emily was glowing, beautiful in her maternity dresses, carrying their future. But Andrew hated that she needed anything, hated the way people cooed over her belly, hated that he had to share attention. So he pulled away, first with late nights, then skipped dinners. Eventually, he stopped pretending at all. That's when she arrived, Chloe Vale. You could spot her from across any room, legs like a runway model, lips like a magazine ad, and a wardrobe designed to attract both men and cameras. She was 26, a self-described influencer, though no one could quite define what she actually influenced. Her father owned a string of nightclubs in Miami, and she lived off trust funds and Instagram likes. She wasn't smart, but she was cunning, and more importantly, she knew exactly what kind of man Andrew Carter was. She didn't care that he was married. In fact, it made things more exciting. She liked being the one he shouldn't have, the dirty secret tucked behind a sweet door. Chloe didn't want love, she wanted power. And Andrew? He wanted someone who made him feel young again. Wild, dangerous. With Chloe, he didn't have to perform. He didn't have to pretend to be a family man. He could be exactly what he was. Selfish, impulsive, arrogant. Their affair didn't happen in secret for long. They were seen, first at a rooftop bar, then at a hotel lounge, and eventually hand in hand walking into the same gala where Emily stood waiting. That night, when Emily confronted him, he didn't deny it. He looked her in the eye and said, "You're lucky I stayed as long as I did." And Chloe? She stood behind him, smug, unbothered, wearing a dress that barely covered her. Emily didn't scream. She didn't slap him. She simply turned and walked away. The next morning, the locks were changed. The truth is, Andrew didn't just betray Emily. He humiliated her. He used her, discarded her, and tried to erase her. Chloe encouraged it. She called Emily dead weight, said the pregnancy was bad branding for a man like Andrew. Together, they laughed at her, called her boring, weak, replaceable. They had no idea who they were mocking. Andrew didn't know that Emily had memorized every account number he carelessly left open on his laptop. He didn't know she overheard conversations he thought she was too stupid to understand. Chloe didn't know that the woman she belittled once ran charity events that raised more money in a night than she had in her entire influencing career. They thought they'd broken her. But Emily wasn't broken. She was silent, patient, watching. They spent weeks parading their relationship around town, flaunting their trips, their shopping sprees, their new chapter. Chloe moved into Andrew's apartment the same week Emily was sleeping in her car. They called it moving forward, but the cracks had already begun to form. Andrew started drinking more. Deals began slipping through his fingers. Chloe, bored and bitter, started leaking stories to tabloids for attention. She posted a photo of herself in the penthouse Emily once called home, captioned, "Upgrade complete." It got thousands of likes, and a subpoena Emily didn't send, but would later use. What Andrew didn't realize was that while he was chasing Instagram validation, Emily was preparing something else, a case. Not just a legal case, but something bigger. Revenge wasn't about yelling or fighting back. It was about rising. About letting them dig their own graves while she built her comeback brick by brick. They thought they were building an empire. They were really just decorating a house of cards. And Emily? She would be the storm that blew it all down. It was supposed to be a celebration. That's how it was advertised, at least. Carter Financial's 10-year gala, a black-tie affair, held at the Grand Riverton Hotel, known for its sweeping staircases, gold-trimmed mirrors, and a rooftop terrace with views of the entire city skyline. Andrew Carter spared no expense. A $1,000 plate dinner, champagne flown in from France, a string quartet flown in from Vienna. And, of course, a guest list brimming with the city's wealthiest elites. It was also supposed to be Emily's first public appearance since the pregnancy. Andrew insisted she come. Told her it was important that people saw stability, that the board needed to know his life was in order. He said it like she was a piece of PR. And after weeks of cold silence, Emily agreed. Maybe, deep down, she still hoped it meant something. Maybe she just wanted to be seen. Wanted to remember what it felt like to stand beside her husband, not in his shadow. She wore a dress she had kept hidden since her second trimester, a deep emerald green that hugged her pregnant belly with grace. Her makeup was soft, her hair pulled into a neat low bun. She didn't want attention. She just wanted to belong again. The night began with smiles, handshakes, photographers snapping quick shots as she entered on Andrew's arm. For a fleeting moment, Emily felt like she was part of something again. Andrew kept his hand on the small of her back, guiding her through conversations and complimenting her appearance when needed. But something felt off. Too rehearsed. Too stiff. Andrew laughed too loudly, checked his phone too often, and his eyes kept drifting to the left side of the ballroom, near the bar, where a woman in red stood sipping a cocktail through a gold straw. Chloe. Emily's heart dropped the moment she saw her. The red dress was intentional, bright, seductive, unforgettable. Her blonde hair fell in perfectly styled curls, her heels at least 5 inches tall. She didn't belong at a corporate event. She wasn't part of the industry. She wasn't family. And yet, she was here. Emily's pulse quickened. Her hands trembled slightly against her clutch. She tried to breathe, to pretend it didn't matter, that maybe it was a coincidence. It wasn't. Andrew leaned in, his voice low and firm. "Don't make a scene." That's all he said. And in that moment, Emily understood. This wasn't a mistake. Chloe wasn't crashing. Andrew had invited her. Minutes later, as the quartet finished their third set and guests found their seats for dinner, the MC walked onto the stage to welcome everyone. Emily, seated at a table near the front, barely heard a word. Her ears were ringing. Her vision blurred slightly as the lights shifted. Then it happened. Andrew took the stage. The crowd clapped politely as he adjusted the microphone. He thanked the guests, thanked the board, thanked everyone who stood by Carter Financial through years of growth and challenge. Then, after a pause, he said it. "I also want to acknowledge someone who's played a major role in my life this past year. Someone who's helped me find balance, inspiration, and clarity during chaotic times." Emily sat up straighter, her heart jumping. He couldn't mean her. "Chloe," he said with a smile, "thank you." Gas rippled through the room. Chloe stood up slowly from her table, all eyes turning toward her. She smiled, walked gracefully toward the stage, and kissed Andrew on the cheek. The photographers caught it instantly. Emily sat frozen, her throat closed, her hands went numb. She wanted to disappear. Her face flushed hot. People around her were whispering. Some turned to look at her with pity, others with curiosity, some with smug satisfaction. No one said her name. No one stopped it. This was her erasure. Public, deliberate, final. She stood, slow and shaky, and quietly made her way out the side doors. She didn't wait for dessert, didn't wait for the formal toast to the future. She pushed past the ballroom staff, past the hallway with gilded portraits, past the women in glittering gowns and the men sipping aged whiskey. She reached the marble restroom and locked herself in the last stall. And then she broke. The sobs came like waves, sharp, uncontrollable, soul-deep. She leaned against the cool tile wall and cried into her dress, her pregnant belly pressed against her knees, her whole body shaking from the inside out. She thought she'd prepared herself for betrayal. But nothing prepares you for being replaced while still holding the life you made together inside you. Nothing prepares you for being erased in front of hundreds of people. When she finally emerged, mascara smudged and voice hoarse, the ballroom had moved on. The music played again. Chloe was now draped across Andrew's arm like she had always been the one meant to be there. Emily didn't go back to their penthouse that night. She didn't go anywhere familiar. She drove until the city lights faded into dark roads and the noise of the gala was a distant hum behind her. She parked in an empty lot behind a shuttered coffee shop, and that's where she stayed. In the same dress. With no coat, holding her belly, and whispering, "We're okay, I promise baby, we're going to be okay." Because now there was nothing left to lose. And for a woman like Emily, nothing left to lose was the most dangerous thing of all. It was somewhere around 3 a.m. when the cold finally crept into her bones. Emily sat curled in the back seat of her car, knees tucked to her chest, a blanket barely covering her growing stomach. Her green gala dress, now wrinkled, damp from tears and stained with the night's humiliation, clung to her like a ghost. She hadn't eaten, she hadn't slept. She barely even blinked. Hours passed, but time felt suspended, like the world had hit pause and left her behind. Rain tapped against the windows. Each droplet sounded like a reminder. You're alone, you're forgotten, you're done. For the first time since it all started, she allowed herself to ask the question she'd been avoiding for weeks. What if I can't do this? Her hand moved instinctively to her belly. The baby kicked again, soft but persistent. It felt like a plea, like her child was telling her to hold on, to not give up. But Emily didn't feel strong anymore. Not like she did when she first packed her things and drove away. Back then, there was at least some dignity, some sliver of hope. Now, there was only silence. Her phone battery had died hours ago. No one had called. No one would. She didn't even know where she was. Some parking lot near the edge of the city, surrounded by dumpsters and flickering streetlights. Her gas tank was almost empty. Her wallet held $3.41 in change, a gift card with 52 cents left on it, and a prenatal vitamin bottle with only 3 pills remaining. She felt like a failure. To herself, to her baby, to everything she had once believed in. She had tried so hard to be the perfect wife, the ideal partner. She sacrificed everything, her job, her dreams, even her voice, to support a man who treated her like nothing more than a pawn in his public image. And now that man stood under spotlights, kissing another woman in front of cameras, while Emily sat in the dark, with cracked lips and a pounding headache, wondering if she even mattered. The worst part wasn't the betrayal. It was the silence that followed it. No one reached out. Not her former friends, not Andrew's colleagues who used to praise her baking, not the women who once sat beside her at charity luncheons. They had moved on. The society she once tried so hard to fit into had closed its doors, and she didn't even get a goodbye. And so, for the first time since she left the penthouse, Emily cracked. She screamed, not loud, not long, but a raw, guttural release of everything she had swallowed. She pounded her fists against the dashboard, cursed Andrew's name, cursed Chloe's smirk, cursed herself for believing in a love that was never real. She sobbed until her lungs hurt, until her vision blurred again, until all that was left was a hollow ache in her chest. Then came the shaking. Her body trembled, part exhaustion, part cold, part fear. What if the baby came early? What if she collapsed in this car and no one found her? What if she never found a way out? Her mind spiraled. She imagined giving birth alone, in this car, in a parking lot. She imagined the news headline, "Unidentified woman found dead, infant survives." It was irrational. But that's what fear does. It takes logic and drowns it in worst-case scenarios. And Emily had no lifeline left. No one to call, no plan, no backup. She tried to steady her breathing, counted backward from 10, held her belly, whispered every prayer she remembered from childhood. Nothing worked. Her hands trembled so hard she could barely hold her water bottle. Her lips muttered half-formed apologies to the baby. "I'm sorry. I'm trying. I'm so sorry, sweetie." She wanted someone to save her. Just once. Someone to look at her, not with pity, not with judgment, but with care. That's when she remembered the key. It had fallen to the floorboard during the chaos. She'd almost forgotten it entirely. The silver hotel key still attached to a navy blue tag engraved with the Langham Master Suite. Mr. Blake? She didn't even know his first name. Just that he had stopped in the rain, seen her, and offered help with no strings attached. She stared at the key in her shaking hand. What if it was real? What if it wasn't a trick? What if, just for one night, she didn't have to be strong? She turned the ignition. The car sputtered, then started. The Langham Hotel stood like a palace in the middle of the city. Grand columns, tall glass windows, velvet awnings. The kind of place she used to drive past and wonder what it was like inside. Now, she pulled into the underground garage, gripping the steering wheel like it was the only solid thing in her world. A valet approached her car. He didn't flinch when he saw her. "Checking in?" he asked. She nodded, held up the key. He smiled. "Right this way, ma'am." Emily followed him inside. Barefoot, mascara streaked, her green gown still damp at the hem. But no one stared. No one laughed. The woman at the front desk simply said, "Welcome, Miss Carter. Mr. Blake left instructions. Your suite is ready." When she stepped into the room, she almost collapsed. It smelled like lavender and lemon. The sheets were freshly pressed. There was food on the table, real food, warm food, bottled water, a robe, a note card that simply read, "Rest. Everything else can wait." She fell onto the bed and cried again, but this time it was different. These were tears of release, of gratitude, of something resembling hope. For the first time in weeks, Emily slept without fear. And when she woke the next morning, something had shifted. She still didn't have a plan, but now she had strength. And soon she'd remember who she was. When Emily woke the next morning, the suite was bathed in soft golden light. For a brief, fleeting second, she forgot everything. The betrayal, the cold car, the silence. She lay in clean sheets, wrapped in warmth, her baby's gentle kicks pressing against her ribs like a quiet morning conversation. Then the memories returned like a wave. The gala, Andrew, Chloe, the parking lot. But there was something different now. Something new. For the first time in weeks, Emily didn't feel like she was drowning. Her feet were still shaky, yes, but they were touching ground. She showered slowly, letting the hot water wash off days of fear and exhaustion. She dressed in the robe left on the hook, ate a warm breakfast, sipped herbal tea. Each act felt like reclaiming a piece of herself. She stared at her reflection in the mirror, not the broken woman who ran from humiliation, but someone else. Someone older, quieter, stronger. Then she saw the envelope. It had been slipped under her door while she slept. Heavy cardstock, her name handwritten across the front in bold ink, Emily. Inside was a single note. I know who you are, and I think it's time the world did too. Blake. Beneath the note was a business card. Grayson Blake, founder, Blake Holdings Private Equity, Media, Technology. Emily stared at the name, her breath caught in her chest. Blake. Of course, she'd heard of him. Everyone in the business world had. Billionaire, visionary, rumored recluse, owner of half the startups in Silicon Valley and a dozen media conglomerates. But why her? Why now? She remembered his eyes that night in the parking lot. The calm, the directness. He wasn't just being kind, he was watching, calculating, and now, reaching out. She wanted to ignore it, to crawl back into bed, but something inside her refused. Instead, she picked up her phone, fully charged now thanks to the charger beside the bed, and began to scroll through her old emails. She dug deep into folders she hadn't opened in years. And then, she found it. The file. It had sat untouched for 3 years, buried beneath wedding plans and tax documents. Her mother's legacy. Most people didn't know this about Emily because Andrew never asked and society never cared. But her mother hadn't just been a nurse. Before she got sick, she had co-founded a literacy nonprofit that created one of the first mobile reading programs for underserved kids in New York. A small startup with a big dream and bigger data. Emily had helped code the back end in college, late nights fueled by microwave popcorn and iced tea. She didn't have a degree in tech, but she had an instinct for patterns. Her mother always said she had a numbers brain. After her mom died, Emily quietly sold the nonprofit's technology to a mid-sized educational platform. The check was 7 figures. But she never touched the money. She didn't want to. Not when she was in love. Not when she thought Andrew would build them a future from his empire. She had tucked the funds into a silent trust, buried the login under layers of encrypted passwords, and told no one. It wasn't about secrecy. It was about identity. It was the last thing that was hers. Until now. With shaking fingers, she logged in. The number stared back at her. 7,411.8734. Her chest tightened. She wasn't broke. She wasn't dependent. She wasn't weak. She was powerful. But even more valuable than the money was the list. The data from her mother's program had been anonymized, cleaned, and refined, but it tracked engagement patterns from over 40,000 families, patterns that could be used to build entire platforms. And she still owned it. She suddenly saw the game from a new angle. While Andrew and Chloe were busy playing dress-up and flaunting designer clothes, Emily was sitting on intellectual property, legacy assets, and market-ready data that tech investors would kill for. And now she had the attention of Grayson Blake. She took a breath, sat down at the sleek hotel desk, opened her laptop, and sent him an email. Subject: the data you're looking for. Message: you helped me when you didn't have to. Now I think I can help you. Let me know if you're serious. Emily Porwer. She didn't expect a response right away, but it came in less than 15 minutes. From Grayson Blake. Subject: lunch. Suite dining room, noon. Bring your file and your fire. Emily smiled. For the first time since the betrayal, she felt like herself. No, better. Because now she knew something Andrew never realized. She had never needed his last name, his money, or his empire. She had her own, and it was time to rebuild. Not as the woman Andrew threw away, but as the woman the world never saw coming. Emily didn't recognize herself at first. The woman staring back at her in the hotel suite mirror looked sharp. Still soft in places, still visibly pregnant, but different. Her face was no longer weighed down by fatigue or doubt. Her eyes, once wide with fear, were focused, calm, unapologetically steady. She was no longer trying to look like someone else's idea of put together. She had nothing to prove to Andrew, or Chloe, or anyone else. This time, the makeover wasn't about image, it was about armor. Her transformation began quietly. No stylists, no magazine teams, just her, standing inside the Langham Suites walk-in closet, carefully selecting clothes that made her feel powerful, not decorative. A structured blazer, a silk blouse that didn't cling but carried presence, a pair of low-heeled black boots, not for fashion but for movement. She let her hair down, clean, sleek but natural. Her makeup was minimal, a bold brow, light concealer, and a single stroke of eyeliner that drew attention to her eyes, not away from them. And just like that, Emily Carter, the woman everyone dismissed, pitied, and erased, was gone. In her place, stood someone new, someone who remembered, someone who built, someone who had nothing left to fear. She stepped into the dining room right at noon. Grayson Blake stood near the window, looking out over the city like a man surveying his kingdom. He turned as she entered, and something shifted in his expression. Not shock, not approval, respect. "You clean up well," he said simply. She smiled, but didn't blush. "I wasn't dirty, just overlooked." He nodded once. No apology, no patronizing, just business. She placed her file on the table and opened it. "This is the original platform structure my mother and I built. You'll find user behavior patterns, demographic breakdowns, engagement flow, and long-term retention data across underserved markets." Grayson didn't interrupt. She continued, flipping pages with quiet confidence. "This data's 3 years old, but still relevant. The engagement curves mirror several current models being pushed into venture rounds right now, most of which are lacking the community retention backend we created here." He leaned forward slightly. "You've already built the solution." "I built the foundation," she corrected. "With the right backing, I can rebuild the platform, target new users, expand to bilingual support, and integrate a revenue-sharing model with nonprofit schools." He nodded slowly, clearly impressed. She waited. Grayson closed the folder. "How much equity are you willing to give up?" Emily met his gaze. 20%, no more." He didn't flinch. "And what do you want?" She didn't hesitate. "I want full creative control. I want my own team, and I want to operate under my name, not Andrew Carter's." A pause. Then Grayson smiled. "Done." That was the beginning. Within 2 weeks, she had an office downtown. Not a corner suite, but not a broom closet either. Enough space for a desk, a whiteboard, and 3 computers. Grayson gave her seed funding, a lawyer, and a project manager. She hired 2 developers and a UX specialist. The baby was due in less than 3 months, but Emily didn't pause. She worked. She built. She designed wireframes between prenatal appointments, negotiated contracts while sipping raspberry leaf tea, and coded for hours with her feet propped up on a yoga ball. She was a force. And the world started noticing. Tech blogs ran stories about the startup mom, curious about the pregnant woman re-entering the industry with a quiet fire and $1 billion backer. But Emily didn't do interviews. She wasn't here for fame. She was here for impact. Her product was called Haven, a nod to her hometown and her past. A literacy and education platform designed for kids who didn't have access to fancy private schools or high-speed internet. She knew what those kids needed, because she had been one of them. She coded with heart, with data, and with precision. And while the press whispered, Andrew Carter noticed. She got the first call 2 months in. He left a message. "Emily, we need to talk. Call me back." She didn't. She got flowers next. Red roses with a gold card. "You look incredible. So proud of you. Let's meet." She tossed them in the trash. Because Emily's transformation wasn't about revenge. It was about remembering. She remembered the nights she begged herself to stay small, stay quiet, stay acceptable. She remembered the way he made her doubt her instincts, the way Chloe smirked as if she had won something, the way the world stayed silent when Emily disappeared. But most importantly, she remembered who she was before the world told her who to be. She didn't need a stage anymore. She was building her own. The boardroom was her runway now. The contracts were her weapons. Her baby, kicking stronger every day, was her reason, not her weakness. And she wasn't afraid of being seen anymore, because now she controlled the spotlight. 1 year later, the Riverton Hotel sparkled again. The chandeliers glowed with the same golden light. Waiters in tuxedos floated through the crowd carrying crystal flutes of champagne. A string quartet played softly in the corner. The city's elite were dressed in their finest, laughing, toasting, circling one another like sharks in heels and cufflinks. It was Carter Financial's annual gala, and Andrew Carter was in his element. His arm was draped around Chloe Vale, who wore a dress that shimmered with every turn. Her makeup was flawless, her smile tight. The two had been parading their power couple status for months, featured in magazines, tabloid blogs, and podcast interviews. He was selling the image of recovery, reinvention, resilience. But behind the photos, the cracks were spreading. Investors were pulling out. Partnerships were crumbling. Chloe had grown restless, and Andrew was trying harder than ever to maintain appearances. Which is why, when the ballroom doors opened and every head turned toward the entrance, The world seemed to stop. Emily Carter walked in. But she wasn't the same woman who had been humiliated here a year ago. She wasn't in a cheap green dress with puffy eyes and shaking hands. She wore a tailored black gown that fit like armor, sleek, sharp, and unyielding. Her hair was pulled back into a polished chignon, her lips painted a bold red that dared anyone to challenge her. On her arm stood Grayson Blake, cool and unreadable in a custom suit. They didn't pause for photos. They didn't need to. The buzz spread through the room like wildfire. People whispered her name. Some gawked, others looked away, ashamed. But no one could ignore her. She walked with purpose, each step deliberate, like the floor belonged to her. And in a way, it did. The press hadn't been told she was coming. Andrew hadn't been told either. When he saw her, his face tightened, his posture stiffened. Chloe turned too, eyes narrowing, confused. Emily didn't break stride. She and Grayson walked straight to the center of the ballroom, where the stage waited. The MC was about to introduce the keynote speaker when Grayson simply raised a hand. "Change of plans," he said smoothly into the mic. "Tonight, we're making a special announcement." Emily stepped forward. She didn't look at Andrew. Not yet. Instead, she faced the crowd. "For those of you who don't know me," she began, "my name is Emily Carter. I was married to Andrew Carter for 5 years." Murmurs rose, confused, awkward. "I was publicly discarded at this very gala, while pregnant. For those of you who were here, you remember. And for those who looked the other way, you should too." The room fell into stunned silence. She let it hang, then continued. "I spent the last year building something of my own. Something that doesn't depend on manipulation or image or power games. It's called Haven, an educational tech platform for underserved youth, funded by Blake Holdings and now valued at over $40 million. Gasps. Grayson nodded subtly beside her. She turned, finally locking eyes with Andrew. "And today, I'm here because I have something else to share." She reached into her clutch and pulled out a small folder. "This," she said, holding it up, "is a full audit of Carter Financial's offshore accounts and tax records, many of which were opened under fake shell corporations and used to illegally hide revenue from both the IRS and your board." Andrew stepped forward. "Emily, what the hell?" She didn't flinch. "You may want to stop talking," she said, her voice calm. "The SEC is already watching, and Chloe, sweetheart, you might want to find a lawyer." Chloe's smile vanished. Emily continued. "I'm not here for revenge. I'm here for truth. For every woman who's ever been silenced. For every person who's ever been erased while the world clapped for their abuser." Applause began, hesitant at first, then stronger. Emily handed the file to a man in the front row, an investor from Carter's board. Then she stepped back. The room erupted. Not into chaos, but into clarity. In one moment, the balance of power shifted. Andrew stood frozen, lips parted, helpless. Chloe, red-faced, turned on her heel and walked out. And Emily? She walked off the stage. Grayson offered his arm. She took it. They exited the ballroom the same way she entered, shoulders back, head high, unbothered. But this time, the whispers weren't about shame. They were about awe. By the time she reached the lobby, 3 reporters had already sent emails requesting interviews. A podcast producer chased her to the elevator. And the investor? He was already dialing a lawyer. Emily didn't look back. Because real revenge isn't about destroying someone else. It's about reclaiming yourself in front of the very people who watched you disappear, and making sure they never forget your name again. 2 weeks after the gala, Emily Carter sat on the terrace of her new office, a modest space overlooking the city skyline. Her fingers rested lightly on her belly, now rounder, firmer. Her due date was just days away. Every night, she felt her baby shift, stretch, push against the skin as if ready to meet the world already. She looked out over the city that had once crushed her. The city where she had slept in her car, where she had broken down behind gas stations, where people whispered her name with pity, if they remembered it at all. Now they whispered her name with awe. Not because she was cruel, not because she humiliated someone publicly, but because she stood up, because she told the truth, because she reminded a room full of power brokers that women like her don't disappear quietly. They rebuild, and then they return, louder than ever. Her company, Haven, had just closed another round of funding, this time from 3 major foundations. Schools in 5 states were already testing the platform. Her team had doubled. And she had just hired 2 single moms as full-time developers, both of whom had once been turned away from traditional firms. And yet, Emily didn't feel powerful in the way she thought she would. She felt something better. She wasn't out for revenge anymore. That part was done. Andrew was under federal review. Chloe had vanished from the tabloids. Carter Financial had postponed their next investor event indefinitely. Emily had no interest in keeping score. Her life wasn't about them anymore. She had rewritten the story, and this time, it ended with her. She opened her laptop and began to type. It wasn't a business memo. It was a letter. A public message she planned to post on the Haven website and across social platforms. She didn't hire a publicist. She didn't run it through lawyers. She wrote it in her voice. Raw. Honest. For every woman who had ever been left behind. To the woman reading this, feeling broken, forgotten, erased, I was you. 1 year ago I slept in my car. 1 year ago I begged for mercy from a man who never loved me. 1 year ago I thought being discarded meant I had no value. But I was wrong. What I've learned is this. Power doesn't come from who you marry, or what you wear, or how perfectly you perform in public. Power comes from what you survive. Power is choosing not to disappear, even when the world makes it easy to. Power is staying kind, even when cruelty would be easier. Power is building again from nothing, with trembling hands and a quiet fire in your heart. To the woman crying in a bathroom, to the mom with no plan and a hungry child, to the girl being told she's too emotional, too loud, too soft, too late, you are not too anything. You are exactly enough. And no one, no man, no system, no cruel betrayal can take that away from you. Your worth is not in your pain, it's in your persistence. So cry, scream, break down if you must. But don't stay there. Please, for yourself, for all of us, stand up again. You don't need a billionaire. You don't need a savior. You don't need anyone to hand you permission. You just need to remember who you are. And if you don't remember yet, hold on. One day you will. And that version of you? She will be unstoppable. With love, Emily. When she hit publish, the website glitched from the surge in traffic. The message spread like wildfire. Women reposted it, cried over it, printed it, and taped it to mirrors. By morning, it had over 10 million views. Reporters asked for interviews. Documentaries offered deals. She declined them all. Because Emily didn't want to be famous. She just wanted to make sure no woman ever again had to sleep in a car to learn her value. A few days later, she gave birth. A little girl. She named her Grace. And when she held Grace for the first time, wrapped in a soft blanket, eyes blinking under the warm lights of a quiet hospital room, Emily whispered, "We're home now." There were no fireworks, no flashing cameras, just peace. And that was enough. Because the world would try again. Someone else would try to silence her, diminish her, reduce her to just a mother or just a woman. But now she was ready, not to fight, but to lead. And maybe, just maybe, help someone else rise too. Because when one woman rises, she leaves the door open for the next. And that's how you start a revolution. Not with anger, but with grace.